And welcome into the Gaming Discourse. I am Tyler Frater alongside Richard Day the Cruz.
Hello.
And Chief Engineer Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater.
It is I, Connor.
It is July 1st, 2021. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at the Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse, where we post videos. I'll have a new video in the next few days about Medal of Honor Allied Assault.
Quiet down so we can get that
here we
nice
go.
ASMR.
You don't have to be quiet.
Oh, there it is.
You ruined it.
There's
just
the
like, what?
Java monster. I really, I get annoyed.
I know it's right here, but
I get annoyed at the sight of monster now because of Death Stranding.
That's fine. This is.
I don't know how you. Like, I don't know how you make that.
You gotta separate the artist from the art. Just kidding. The art from the artist.
You gotta separate the artist from the sellout.
Yeah. It's like Sam. America's fractured. Meanwhile, there's monster energy.
Cracking them open like Stone Cold Steve.
It's ridiculous. And it's literally the scene from Wayne's World where they're like,
I bowed down to no sponsor. Opens a Pizza Hut box.
Yeah. He's like, some people, man, they just don't get it. And then Mike Myers opens just like Coke. It's the choice of new generation. It's just, oh my God. Anyway.
I don't care for Monster Energy. Those are great though.
Yeah, I don't drink energy drinks, but I will go out of my way for the rest of my life not to pick Monster Energy.
That's fine.
Because of how they annoy me with Death Stranding.
I can't find cranberry Red Bulls anymore, and that greatly upsets me.
Sorry.
They were so good.
But I feel like that with a lot of advertisements. Like, we watched a movie on YouTube. It was free with ads.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a 2.5 long hour movie.
Mm.
And the first half of the movie had one ad. All the other ads, which were 6-7 ads, back-ended at the very back, right? Now, the movie we were watching was All Quiet on the Western Front, the 1979 version, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So the beginning of the film is training, getting to the front, the establishment of it all, right? The back half of the film is tragedy. All of his friends die off one by one as it ramps up to the ending of the film where it's the super sad ending. It's about World War I. It's not going to be happy, right? But the back end of the film, there's like these moments where some character dies, this really horrible death.
Get shot.
And then
Come on down to Taco Bell.
That's exactly literally how it happened. That is literally how it happened. It's like, the new cheesy queso de lupa on sale now. It's like,
if only they had those in the
bitch.
trenches.
Yeah, exactly. And I told my wife, I said, we're not eating at Taco Bell for the next year. I don't care. We never really do. But that ad is now having the reverse effect on me. I'm so annoyed that appeared. And then there was a little trailer for a new movie with Benicio del Toro and Don Cheadle, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what this movie is. And I love Don Cheadle with all my heart. But I'm never going to see this movie because of how annoyed I was that I needed to see a 5-second ad in the middle of some super dramatic German push across no man's land.
And that's just poor planning because every movie is structured to have the climax at the end. So why would you just ruin that? Oh,
yeah,
terrible. That's terrible.
It's dumb. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about video games.
Are we?
So I apologize for going off on tangents. Connor.
Yes.
You did not play.
Correct. I've been traveling again.
You did not play anything this week?
Yes.
Richard.
Hey.
Why don't you tell us what you've been playing?
I'm going to go back a little bit to Ratchet and Clank because there were some things I didn't talk about last week.
Flashback.
What was this, a Ubisoft?
Oh, God.
Sound like Ubisoft E3, babe. Sorry, that was...
Mr. Caffeine. I'm not him.
That was supposed to be a
two
comedian.
assholes from not SNL.
Dennis Miller or whatever. Sorry, I don't know why I pulled out a random Dennis Miller.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Wow.
Especially Dennis Miller.
Podcast is off the rails already.
So Ratchet and Clank, out of all of the new games I've played for the new generation, had by far the most glitches I have ever seen in a AAA title.
Wait. This one?
Yes, this one. Yeah.
Oh,
like
okay.
for me, it had a lot of glitches. There were lots of not particle effects, but graphics, like, kind of jittering or like being halfway stuck into like the ground, like after like explosions would happen. I had there's several levels where you will go up to this floating crystal and you'll hit it, and immediately immediately you'll flip flop between dimensions. So one dimension, like the planet, you know, will look a certain way, and then the other dimension, the planet just won't be there anymore. Like it's destroyed. But there was one time I escaped an area that you're supposed to leave with, and it takes you back to the beginning of the level. And I hit the crystal. There was just nothing. Like it was just me standing on like in an invisible world. Yeah. I mean, but in the distance I could see like, oh, there's my ship. There's like everything. And then like I had like to move forward onto the platform, and the platform took me through nothing all the way to my ship. And I was like, okay, well, let me jump it, because there has to be something here for me to land on. So I like double jumped over there. I just fell right through. I was oh shit. So when it loaded me back up, it was still there. But several hours later, when I went back to play that level again and went through that whole process again, it did it again. So
it's a feature.
Yeah, yeah, I guess so. So that happened twice now. And then there was a part where my game just crashed. Like it just.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it went to, I transported to a new planet, and it just never loaded. Never, like it went to black screen to like kind of do a screen transition. And it just stayed black. And I was like, oh boy. So I left it there, and I pulled up my menu, and I said, quit game. I want to quit the game, close it down. And then it said closing application for like several minutes. And I was like, oh, I know this, because my PS4 did that, and that's when I lost my like everything. And this is solid state hard drive, so this is different now. Like, I mean, solid states can't really like, that happens to you, it's kind of, you're screwed if I remember correctly. Anyways, I had to hard shut off my PS5 and turn it on again. Thankfully, I didn't lose much progress, and it was okay, but it was still a little.
I hate little
scary
moments like that.
Yeah, it was a little scary.
I had a moment a couple months ago playing Death Stranding, and my controller would not sync up with the PS4, and it would die instantly when I was, and I had no idea why. And even if I plugged it into my PS4, it still wouldn't turn on. And I didn't know if it was a problem with the PS4 not syncing or the controller just being dead. But I had to like restart my PlayStation twice, and that's never happened again. But man, that is, when you have like a problem that bad with something and it just appears out of nowhere and then goes away whence it came. Oh my Lord, is that terrifying.
And they're so specific too. Like there are definitely issues that you hear about that everyone talks about online that you can find out, you know, what the solution is very quickly. But then there's some things where you just kind of have to scour forums or Reddit or something. So
contact a sage.
Yeah, you would hope. But also the haptics on Ratchet and Clank weren't very impressive to me. People love them, but I didn't notice them like at all. Like, you know, with Returnal, I don't know if it's because of the extreme way that they lock your trigger when they make you do it halfway, but Ratchet and Clank has that same thing. Like, oh, pull it halfway and it does this. The rest of the way it does, you know, whatever other effect it has. But I never felt that extreme of a stop as I have with like Returnal. And I never really knew if I was doing it correctly or not. The rumble is always impressive as well. One thing I actually appreciate with rumble, the type of rumble the PS5 controller has, is if you are looking at something that can be interacted with, your controller will shake.
Oh, okay.
And I do like that. That happens on Returnal, and I believe that happened on Resident Evil Village. But that's helpful, because especially if I'm looking at something where it's not quite apparent that I can interact with that item, then it definitely helps with that. And so that's another thing I had a problem with Ratchet and Clank. And then this is not much of an issue more than the fact that they kind of showed it off a lot. But, you know, did you ever see gameplay for Ratchet and Clank?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know that ability they have where they can grab the dimension and like pull it towards them, and you get
I think we saw that in a trailer.
That does not happen very often. Like
that's too bad.
It does. So I guess I'm being facetious with that phrase. It does. You can use it to get to other spaces, or like if you have a way too long of a jump, it's obvious they want you to use that to pull yourself towards it. I did not find it happening very often in battles or in fights, which I was hoping I would see more of, because I felt like I could use that as sort of a way to keep the combat flowing The dashes and the double jumps are fine because you can dodge all over the place, but being able to like shoot this guy, pull yourself to that other area, then jump, or around some more while there's long distance enemies. I figure you do that a lot more, but I never noticed that many of those effects that you're able to do. So that was kind of, they didn't lean on it too hard as far as like, you can do this, but I felt like they could have added it more in a lot of other, it's mostly boss battles they had them. And then some bigger fights as well. But other than that, I wish they used them more. So that's a Ratchet and Clank. And then still I've been playing Apex Legends because I don't know what I'm going to play next. I have way too many games, and now it's kind of like, well, where do I start? Like, what next? And I know, and I have Returnal, and I keep like sitting there, like, I got to get started on Returnal, and I sit down, and I'm like, I don't.
What you do now?
Like hopping into it.
Is you just get like a wheel and just put all the games on there, spin it.
Yeah,
everyone it lands on. Hey, that's what I'm playing.
All 400 plus of them.
There you go.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm sure we'll talk about it in an hour or so, but. There's a whole new island in Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, but which I can't wait for. But Apex Legends, I think the thing with Apex is that I'm addicted to it now. I'm thinking about it constantly, and I have realized that compared to Warzone, Fortnite, all these other games, Apex has a lot more to it as far as your arsenal and how to play the game. There is a specific way that it wants you to play, and that's very fast, and I don't want to say loose, but it's imperative to have cover. It's imperative to know your characters and to use them wisely and correctly. There are some characters who I don't want to call them useless, but they are just very suited for very specific situations, which don't always arise because you won't ever be in a position on the map where you can use those characters. So it's this really random, I guess it's a game of chance, but also it's a game of skill as well. Like, and instead of actually one of my friends I'm playing with explained it very well. With games like Call of Duty or other shooters, a lot of times the bullet hits when you pull the trigger aiming at an enemy are immediate. Like, the bullets get to them immediately. Yeah. Apex does not have that. Like, Apex, the bullet will take a moment to get there, and of course it has major bullet drop. Like, you really have to take into effect bullet drop as well. So there's a lot more things to think about when you get into firefights on Apex Legends, and I think that's one thing that is kind of sunken its teeth into me and rearing its head like as I play the game, and I think it's keeping me coming back to play it. And I've also gotten into the lore as well, which they have really good cutscenes like to tell you the story of what's going on. So
I think it's known as hit scan.
Yeah, you're correct. It is hit scan.
Okay. Yeah, I think Overwatch actually has both. If I remember correctly.
Does it?
I think so. I think it's possible for a game to have both. But if I remember correctly, one of the benefits of like a Soldier 76 is that because it's hit scan, he can fight certain people better than other people can fight. But like snipers, their bullet takes time to travel. It's not immediate. I may be super wrong about that, but that's what I remember. I remember something about
I think you're right.
Soldier 76 having like hit scan.
I think you're right, but it's not as noticeable. It's not very noticeable, but you are correct, because I do think about playing as Widowmaker and I played Overwatch a lot as well, and shooting her gun, how the bullet travels, it is a lot slower than 76's assault rifle, so that makes sense.
Okay. And then characters like Junkrat, where you can actually see it travel.
Well, yeah, it's a grenade launcher, so you actually literally watch it go. Yeah. Okay. Then
that's it.
I had an ultimate first world problem this week.
Wow.
The Steam summer sale started.
Uh-oh.
So my ultimate first world problem is that I got a bunch of games, and then I went to my game list and I forgot which games I bought.
So real quick,
I had to scroll through.
This just reminds me. I lied. I did play a game this week.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, but continue because
you want to talk about Cruelty Squad.
Yeah.
You played it for 30 minutes.
Keep going, though.
Okay. So I got a bunch of games on the Steam summer sale. Forgot what they were. Had to go back to the receipt, the email receipt, and look up and go, oh yeah, that's the one I bought. and then search it in the list of a bajillion Steam games and start installing it. But I got Adios. I haven't played it yet, but it's a narrative about somebody who decides they don't want to work with the mob anymore. It's interesting, like a farmer that buries bodies and he doesn't want to do it anymore.
Yes.
Looks really cool. I got a couple like old tactical games. But I got 2 games that I really want to talk about, Cruelty Squad and Witch Hunt. And then I got a game called Skinwalker Hunt, which is sort of a spiritual successor to Witch Hunt. It's the same style, just different setting and different type of monster you're going after. But so I'll tackle Witch Hunt first. Witch Hunt is by, I think it's a single developer, because when it says published, developed, it just lists someone's name. So if it's not by a single developer, it's at least credited to one or credited to a development team that's named after, like a Motley Crue type thing, or not Motley Crue. What's the band that's named after Van Halen? It's like named after one of the dudes.
There's a lot of those.
Yeah, sorry. That was the one I was trying to think of.
Narrow it down.
So Witch Hunt, have you guys played it's in Hunt Showdown?
No, but that is not necessarily a battle royale. It's a versus. It's a PvP game. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a PvP game.
And PvE.
Hunt Showdown is
PvPvE.
It's really freaking cool. It's a bunch of people that go out to grab a bounty on a monster, and you have to hunt this monster down and kill it. There's zombies around. There's there's like special zombies that do a lot of damage to you. And then if you see enemy players, it's every man for himself. So you want to take out players when you see them, kind of a thing. Witch Hunt is sort of a light version of that, and it's single player. So you're by yourself, and you're trying to hunt down a monster in a mini open world. And how the game works is you spawn in the forest that you're running through, and you just sort of explore, walk around, and when you get within 500 meters of the monster, you start to hear your own heartbeat. So you know that you're close. And you try to sort of triangulate your position, and once the heartbeat increases, then you're within, I think it's 100 meters. So you know you're getting closer. But the objective of the game is to hunt down this special monster, kill it. But that takes a while because the monster has a lot of health. It's set in the 1800s, so you have like a musket with you.
Oh, yeah.
So when you shoot at it, it takes 15 seconds to reload the musket. So you take one shot and it runs away. If it doesn't know where you are and it's not running toward you, it'll just run away really fast. So it becomes a tracking game of sorts. And meanwhile, across this world, there are these weird zombie dogs and zombie people that'll come after you. There's spirits. Like there are these really creepy silhouettes of just this, like a black silhouette of a person, like a smoky dark black ghost thing way out in the middle of nowhere. And as you get close, you start to hear whispers.
Ooh.
And if you get too close, it'll like screw up your vision, and you get a ton of I think you get some damage done to you. So you have to learn like what kinds of spirits and ghosts you have to stay away from. And there is one type of spirit that is safe that you can approach and it'll help you out. But what the structure of the game is, you go out into the open world, you collect coins, and you collect, you may find new perks that allow you to do new things. And then you go back to town, and town is like a safe spot where you can purchase upgrades, purchase more ammo and stuff like that. But when you're out in the open world, you don't have a lot of health. Your mana, which you use to do special abilities, doesn't increase unless you kill like a zombie and then take that zombie's magical power.
Okay.
So you don't have a lot of mana. One ability that's really freaking cool is you get to see what the monster sees for a couple seconds. So if you're close to the monster but you don't know which direction it's in, you press this button and then you see what the monster is seeing. And if it sees a big tree that you recognize, then you kind of know what direction it's in.
Gotcha.
But it's a very atmospheric, super atmospheric, super, all those kinds of words, immersive. Not a lot of HUD. You don't see your own position on the map. That's an upgrade you have to buy. But when you start out, you just have the map, and you have to use landmarks to sort of know where you are and which direction
like the old
to go.
times.
Yeah, it's very cool. But But anyway, so I defeated the first monster, and after defeating the first monster, then you actually have to hunt the witch that's been haunting the forest and turning it evil. And that's really creepy because the witch is, you have to complete a quest to make her vulnerable. And until then, she's invulnerable. And it's creepy because she's invisible, and you'll just hear faint crying, and then all of a sudden she's screaming. There's this loud screaming voice, and she's like sort of charging you, and you just have to run away. So it's very creepy, but it's a very good game. Skinwalker Hunt, which I have not played yet because I wanted to play Witch Hunt first. Skinwalker Hunt is, I think it's set modern day, and you're hunting sort of like it's like a deer, but it's bipedal, and it's got sort of like an antler.
If you Google Wendigo,
similar to it, and it's sort of like you're hunting Bigfoot kind of a thing, and Bigfoot's homicidal.
Hunting a skinwalker.
Sure. But anyway, so I'm excited to get into that because I think it's similar structure, but with some upgrades. Anyway, the other game that I've been playing a lot is Cruelty Squad. So I'm not even sure how to describe.
It's an anti-game.
Cruelty Squad. Cruelty Squad it has PS1 graphics.
That's being generous.
It is about a person. It is set in a dystopia where you are somebody who's down on their luck and you're hired by a company as essentially a hitman. But in this dystopia, you're not viewed so much of a hitman as you are just an employee. And it's almost like people that do your job are just everywhere. So companies just send people to kill like other CEOs all the time. And it's a mix of Hotline Miami with a little bit of stealth. You can upgrade your character with implants. So there's some cyberpunk in there, both the genre and the game itself. And it's a very odd game.
Yes.
Like I said, it has PS1 graphics, but things are textured, it's not textured to look quote unquote realistic. It's textured to look crazy. So doors will have, sometimes walls will all be faces, like just this weird 8-bit face all over the place in some rooms. Sometimes walls are made out of like weird polka dot colors. There's all kinds of weird shapes and things like that. People's faces look really creepy because it's polygon, but they all have frowns and like sad faces on. It's very strange, but it's very fun.
I think the best review of it is viciously against a pleasant user experience.
Yes.
Ooh, what is this called again?
It's called Cruelty Squad.
Okay.
I want to call it an acid trip, but I've never been on acid, so I can't get. But I can tell you from like Always Sunny in Philadelphia, if that representation is accurate, then I would say Cruelty Squad is an acid trip. It's very colorful. It's a lot of fun, and it's very strange. Very strange. There's a stock market for companies, fish, and body parts. So when you kill somebody, you can eat their body to get health, and then there'll be like their intestines or their pancreas. And you can pick those up and you can sell them on the body part market. And the market goes at all times. So you're in the middle of a level and you're like, hey, what are the prices on brains right now? And you just look up the stock, the part market, and it may be up or down. And you're like, oh, okay, I'll just save my brain, wait for the market to pick back up, or the brain that you picked up. And you sell stuff and get upgrades. And it's one of those games where because I think it takes inspiration from like early 2000s shooters. There's a bunch of weird secrets, and around levels I keep finding these tiny doors, but I have no idea how to shrink your character to get to the size of these tiny doors. So there's funny things like that. Yeah. I'll just have to play it more. But if you're a fan of Hotline Miami or
it looks like it was
roguelikes in general. It's not really a hardcore rogue. Go ahead.
There's a game that was released last year, 2 years ago, that was basically made on the Doom engine. that looks similar to this. I forgot what it's called, but I mean, this looks like Doom 64.
Yes, it's very. Yeah. It even has a border around it, like a lot of old shooters and things had like borders around the screen. The original System Shock had like a border around the screen. And
according to boy modder Hypno. You basically play as the guy who killed Epstein.
Yes. So it's a really strange game, but I'm having a lot of fun with it. And yeah, I'll have to report back as I get more. Connor really disliked it when he tried it.
It was, I mean, I think one of the best ways to describe the game is just, it's unsettling.
Oh yeah, no, the entire thing is very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because it's the narrative is cynical, it's fearful, it's also darkly humorous.
Mm-hmm.
Like you'll be going through a building, taking people out, and you'll talk to someone who isn't afraid or isn't running around like a civilian, and the civilian will have some weird line like, "Did you see this episode of blah 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 last night?" You know, like something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You go to one of the levels is a neighborhood, and all the houses are just, they're like, it's like if children designed houses. Like they just look ridiculous, and it's all super colorful. But the narrative of the game is super dark because you're going around and enforcing corporate control on the populace by killing off other companies, or if a company decides they want to sell their product at a lesser price, and you know your company doesn't like that, they send you to take out the CEO. So it's all very dystopian and all very dark and feels very sad, but at the same time there's a humor about it. I've been watching Barry. Have you guys ever seen Barry?
Yes.
The show with Bill Hader.
Yeah.
And he plays a hitman who's also an actor, and it's very dark but also somehow really funny at the same time.
Well, because it's Bill Hader.
It's because it's Bill Hader, who's a genius.
Yeah.
But Cruelty Squad reminds me a lot of that. It's just like, you want to laugh, but you're terrified. You're not really sure what to do. Anyway, I will report back later. Are we good to move on to the news then?
That game's fucking weird.
I'm sorry, Connor. Herman Hulst did an interview with British GQ. We're going to talk about it right now. It was Herman Hulst, and I'm sorry, I do not know how to pronounce his name. Alari Kitainen, I think, of Housemarque. I think it's the co-founder and head of Housemarque. They spoke about PlayStation's acquisition of Housemarque, which officially was announced a few days ago. One interesting part of the interview, they covered a lot of stuff, but there was one sort of quote that was making the rounds. Hulst was asked if he sees the recent strings of deals made between publishers and developers like Microsoft and Xbox, or Oculus and VR developers, as an arms race. Hulst, which I don't remember his official title, but he's sort of the somewhat equivalent of, well, no, Jim Ryan would be the equivalent of
Sean Layden or
Phil Spencer at Xbox, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure who Hulst would be the equivalent of.
I think he's worldwide.
Worldwide.
Yeah.
So maybe he would be,
because Jim Ryan Jim Ryan I believe is U.S. So Herman Hulst might be worldwide.
Well, maybe they're both sort of on the Spencer.
Well, let's look right now.
Spencer. Anyway, I didn't have his title. Anyway, to British JQ, he was asked about if he considers all these companies buying up developers as an arms race. His answer was, quote, "No, not at all. We're very selective about the developers that we bring in. I'm always looking for people that have a similar set of values, similar creative ambitions, and work very well within our team that we can further invest in and help grow as creators. It's not like we were going around and just making random acquisitions. They're very, very targeted acquisitions of teams that we know well. The amount of collaboration between our external development group and Housemarque has been so deep." Also in the news, Bluepoint Games appears that they may be bought out by PlayStation.
Yeah.
That has not been official, but there was an image tweeted out by a Sony handle that showed the same image with Housemarque, but instead of Housemarque's logo, it was Bluepoint's logo. If that's a typo, that's one hell of a typo.
That's a big typo.
Yeah, it's a big typo.
A typo.
So we don't know if that's official yet or if that's coming in the next few days, but it's one of those things where it feels like it's probably safe to assume it will probably be announced. Go ahead.
Wasn't Sony, going to be focusing on developing their own studio, like their own bull, getting them built up, and not? Wasn't that a thing a few weeks ago, a few months ago?
With how they Sony Studio Japan, how they like dismantled that and then like moved them around and stuff.
Wasn't that their whole deal? They were going to start,
I don't remember that. I mean, I remember that, but I don't remember why that came about. I'm kind of blanking on it. I know Team Asobi came out of that, the Astrobot guys.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what they plan to do with those other employees, unfortunately.
I just remember right around the time of the Bethesda acquisition that Sony did something and said something along the lines of focusing internally rather than externally.
Okay. I don't remember it specifically.
Oh, was that when they were talking? Right, that was when they were talking about making only AAA games, right?
Like with the story about Bend.
Yes,
and
about Bend Studio,
and they were passing on the idea for a
Days Gone sequel, and that they wanted to solely focus on like really big blockbuster games.
Yes, yeah.
I think that's that might be what you're talking about there.
Okay,
yeah, I could see. I think in their eyes, it's probably not a contradiction.
Yeah,
because in the interview they talked about how Housemarque wanted to do bigger and better things, which not that what they've done is less valuable from a monetary standpoint. Yeah, sure, but artistically, it's not less valuable than like big budget AAA titles. So one thing that I thought was interesting from the interview is apparently Returnal has been a success.
Mm-hmm.
Great to hear.
I don't want to know if it was a huge success or
as long as it's a success. I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah. The other thing I want to say though, and I haven't played a ton of Returnal, but Returnal was good, instantly intrigued me and all that stuff, but it didn't appear to be super different from a lot of other roguelites and stuff, right?
Okay.
Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Hades is relatively formulaic, but they execute the formula to like near perfection.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention they had a ton of great dialogue. So that was sort of what Supergiant Games brought to the table. I feel like with Returnal and the little that I've played, so again, I have to, preface this with that. It's the same thing where it's like they got a lot of stuff right, but it wasn't as if it was innovative or super different than a lot of other roguelites,
Yeah.
I don't think that's a criticism. I think that's just sort of how it was.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
And the reason I'm saying this is because if it were something that were super duper innovative, I think we would view the acquisition of Housemarque differently, right? I hope I'm making sense here. But instead, it's just they've shown what the thing that they did really well, and they've done good in the past with PlayStation. They've done well with PlayStation in the past. So this isn't a company that, I don't know how to say it without sounding rude. But this is a company that I feel like you know what you're going to get out of them, right?
Okay.
And it's always quality. It's always really, really good.
Yeah, sure.
But it's not like I wouldn't expect them to do a Horizon Zero Dawn for their next title.
Yeah.
Not that I think they're incapable of that.
Mm-hmm.
All I'm saying is like this is what they've done. This is what they're great at.
They're going to do the next Dead Space.
But
I don't think what you're saying is rude at all. Because if you're good at something, why change what you do? Like there are plenty of developers or publishers that I can point at, like in the arcade days, who only did one type of genre of game because they were good at it. And Housemarque, same. They're great at a bullet hell shooter type game.
Yeah.
And that's been most of their stuff.
And so tying my sort of loosey-goosey opinion here all together, I wonder how conversations go in business deals like this. Because see, for Sony, you know all that, right? Here's what they've done, here's their track record. And then I wonder, like, does Housemarque think, where's their comfort level with sort of expanding and maybe trying to do a Horizon Zero Dawn? And the reason I bring up Horizon Zero Dawn is because before that, Guerrilla Games was Killzone, right?
Yeah.
And then they went from, a mediocre first-person shooter, at least with Killzone Shadowfall, to a really great open world Far Cry / some other games with dinosaurs, which is like a totally different genre.
Robot dinosaurs,
sorry.
The superior version of a dinosaur.
Yes. But anyway, so maybe they could make a sort of a genre change like that. The other thing that I think, and this is about the clip or the quote specifically, there were people that said it was sort of a snipe at Xbox. I think Kotaku wrote a piece. It was sort of like a jab at Xbox because of all the acquisitions Xbox has been making and stuff like that. I don't know if I see it that way, though.
I don't think I see it that way either.
No disrespect onto Housemarque, but if this was a jab at Xbox, it's kind of a weak jab.
Well, let me redefine that. It wasn't their acquisition of Housemarque is the jab. It's his quote specifically that when they go out and make acquisitions, they're not just handing out acquisitions left and right. It's that these things, because he said specifically, we're not going around just making random acquisitions. They're very, very targeted, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Right. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, and I don't think it's a jab at all. I just think, unfortunately, gaming journalism is looking for something
that could be the case
to spark drama, because I don't believe all the acquisitions that Microsoft has made haven't necessarily been willy-nilly acquisitions either. Sure. I mean, I think Ninja Theory was a great pickup. I do think that obviously Bethesda was an incredible pickup. I know they've had a couple others. Tango is part of Bethesda. You know, no, they've had Rare. I can't think of all the other acquisitions they made.
I mean, the people that did Cuphead. Right?
Yeah, right.
They've done a bunch.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna know off the top of my head.
So, but I mean, I think you just take a look at the library that PlayStation has had, and yeah, they have very specific titles. And this goes back to the article we were talking about a couple months ago. Like, all of their titles are very cinematic, storytelling, blockbuster type of games, and they're always successful with that. So I think Hulst is correct as far as
the comment it wouldn't be a jab, because it's just their doctrine. Again, we talked about this a few weeks ago, and you were just getting into it. Sony is very curated, quantity over quality, and Microsoft has seemingly the mindset of quantity is a quality of its own.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I don't see what Microsoft is doing as I don't think Hulst was saying this, but I don't see what they're doing as lazy or as like what's the word? Slapshod, right? Random. And one reason is because if you're Microsoft, that's sort of something that you had to do. Yeah. Because 4 or 5 years ago, I mean, it was Gears and Halo and Forza. Yeah. That was it. Yeah. And so I think to get anything underneath and to get anything underneath the Xbox radar is great. Another thing is that it's diversifying, right? It's not every game has to be, this stalwart, huge title, right? Like it kind of has to be with Xbox. I mean, with PlayStation, right? Yeah. It feels like every PlayStation exclusive, like we've said,
is this
has to be this game. And for the past 2-3 years, they all have been. So good on them. But with the way that Xbox has crafted its ecosystem, it just makes more sense that you are pumping things into that ecosystem that, one, take less time to develop, and two, are more diverse, because you want more things in that ecosystem to attract wider audiences and hit a wider market, and that's what their whole ecosystem is about, right?
And that's so interesting to look at the gaming landscape and gamers in general. I think that they have a more lenient outlook on, we're going to talk about Game Pass now. With Game Pass and with how many acquisitions Xbox made, they have the so-called luxury of throwing out games very quickly that are like 7s and 8s, but due to the fact that people have Game Pass and they don't necessarily see themselves as paying $60 for each of those games, they'll probably look at it in a better light than they would paying $60 for it. So in the long run, Microsoft might take more shots, but eventually they'll have a sort of bigger library, whereas Sony, every time, wait, hit, hit. They're very, like you said, targeted and very specific, what they're releasing. So anyways, there's a long drawn out way to basically say that there is no jab at all. Yeah. They do two different things, and we keep talking about this.
Yeah. And I don't, I didn't see just to emphasize, I don't think there was a jab there. Yeah. And I think sometimes when you're saying what the other side is doing, it's hard not to sound like a jab, because in some ways, I don't know, maybe you could define as Microsoft going out and just, hey, you get a deal, you get a deal, you get a deal. But again, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. And I don't think it's the same conversation as with storefronts and what they let on their storefront and stuff like that. That I feel like that's something different. That's a different problem that Steam has and whatnot. But yeah, we'll talk about a storefront here in a second. The one thing I wish I had a better sort of finger on the pulse is Nintendo. But I maybe I'm overcomplicating it because Nintendo's just like, hey, we've got Mario and Zelda and the Switch and Animal Crossing. So we're fine. Like, is that really, does it really boil down to that with Nintendo? Like, is that really how simple it is?
Yeah. So Sony and Microsoft are pseudo competing. They're different ways of producing and putting out games and getting games. And then Nintendo's just off, in the HOV lane doing their own thing, enjoying their tunes. While Sony and Microsoft
are on the same road. True. Okay.
Still to this day, Nintendo sees themselves, and I think as a toy maker, not because that's what they used to do.
That's something that you say a lot.
And they see themselves as something for everyone. Like they need to make sure that every single one of their games, everyone can play it.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not, catered to like the older audiences or whatnot. Like there was an article that just came out yesterday that a studio had pitched to them a more realistic version of their racing game F-Zero. And so they talked about how like they made a demo where it was kind of like this open world thing. You drive your car around, your futuristic car, and if you were to take damage, particularly on certain like areas of your car, like your booster would break off, and you'd have to control your car differently. That sounds cool. That's already immediately confusing for the younger audiences.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so like Nintendo passed on it. I'm not saying that's the reason they passed on it, but knowing Nintendo, I can see them passing on it because of that.
They did it for the kids.
Yes, because. Nintendo has, and I've said this before on this podcast, Nintendo has this amazing ability to take a adult genre and make it for kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like Pikmin is RTS kids. Splatoon is a shooter game for kids, so it's they have a specific audience and they're sticking to it.
Yeah.
And somehow because of it, 35 million copies of Mario Kart 8 sold alone, and Animal Crossing has sold over 20 million.
And it seems like every time we do the MPT numbers, every now and then Mario Kart 8 makes an appearance somewhere.
Yeah.
I think you compared Ratchet and Clank to Pixar.
Yeah.
And I think Nintendo would probably be pretty good because everyone appreciates Pixar films, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So it's like kids love it, adults love it.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of their thing. Nintendo's right in there. Breath of the Wild mesmerized a 30-year-old the same way it mesmerized a 10-year-old, right?
Yeah.
And I guess it probably takes a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of self-awareness and a lot of understanding what you are to sort of hit that mark perfectly, like Nintendo does all the time.
And they're just sticking to their doctrine.
So, yes. Okay, anyway.
Herman Hulst is the head of PlayStation Studios.
Yes. PlayStation Studios, okay, thank you. So, yeah, I really have no idea. We'll just say he's equivalent to Phil Spencer alongside Jim Ryan. There. We'll just stick with that. Okay. Moving on. Publishers spoke out about the way Sony handles its store. This began on Twitter with Ian Garner, who's the co-founder of Neon Doctrine. Garner made a thread about PlayStation, but didn't call PlayStation out by name, instead saying he was talking about Phantom X, an operator of a very successful console that does not have Game Pass. Platform X, excuse me. Did I say PlayStation X?
You said Phantom.
Oh, really?
Phantom
Well, that actually sounds a lot cooler.
Yeah,
it sounds like Xbox. Awesome.
He said Platform X, which is an operator of a very successful console that does not have Game Pass. So
Nintendo.
He was hinting at PlayStation.
There was also, when he made that, there was also a graph which had subnames of these platforms, and they were very obvious, like who was it. Like there was
really?
Plumber Without a Wrench. It was like not Nintendo, and it was So that also helped. The image was helped.
Get into the entire thread because it is very long, but put some together here to make somewhat of a long quote, but I think it's important. So Garner said, quote, Platform X gives developers no ability to manage their games. In order to get promotion, you must jump through hoops, beg, and plead for any level of promotion. If PlayStation, I'm just going to substitute it now. If PlayStation doesn't like your game, no fanfare, no feature, no love. There is nothing you can do to fix this. Wish lists have no effect, so all your personal marketing means nothing to PlayStation. All that matters is their evaluation. How is this evaluation done? Don't know. They don't share that, nor will they share their value they ascribe to my game. But don't worry, there is a way to guarantee you get featured. All you need to do is spend a very reasonable minimum of $25,000 and then 30% of your subsequent earnings, end quote. Other publishers weighed in as well. Matthew White, who is the CEO of Whitehorn Games, said that less than 3% of their sales as a company are on PlayStation, and that they tell developers not to expect sales on PlayStation since it's so hard to work with them. There was one other publisher on here, but I didn't get to writing them down. But anyway, there was multiple, and I think even IGN ended up writing a story about this. So we just had a discussion about the differences between PlayStation and Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do we think about this?
I mean, that just falls into PlayStation's doctrine. They want to do a very specific thing. Want to produce high quality game. They want to have, these giant cinematic games on their system. So they're going to be pushing that. Other things, they'll have other games on their system, but they're not going to, put a lot of focus into them because it's not what they want. It doesn't fit into the PlayStation idea.
So I think one of the distinctions here is that specifically with PlayStation exclusives, you're correct. I think I see this as somewhat of a feeling of a storefront, right? And that's the distinction. Yeah. Is even if that's PlayStation's goal with their exclusives, they still have a storefront to run that is pushing things that they sell on their storefront, but aren't exclusives. But those things are still making them money, right? Yeah. So it's still part of their business model. And I find it surprising that PlayStation, well, not surprising. I find it illuminating, not necessarily surprising, that PlayStation is so tough to work with, but it does sort of march in tune with what we've heard about PlayStation being a stickler for cross-platform and stuff, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Because with what we know about how they were so scared of cross-platform, yeah. If you asked Jim Ryan 2 years ago, it's for the children. If you take that into consideration, this definitely, I think, slots in with that, right? Because if you are sort of not super concerned about everything else surrounding your storefront, and your main concerns are your hit games, your console, that stuff, then I could see that you leave your storefront lagging behind. And maybe this is, I mean, you see this and you see Game Pass like this. I feel like at some point this would be something that PlayStation would have to shore up, right? Because if you
depends on how much money they make.
Yeah, true.
Because Game Pass is just residual money. That number's only growing. Like, don't need to. You're right. It's a failure of the storefront, I think, mostly. Like the other things, yes, I'm sure they're all issues. But biggest thing on Steam games is like wishlist us. Wishlist us. Sure. There's so many games out there nowadays that the normal gamer can't keep track of everything. I can't keep track of it. How many games do you remember from Wholesome Game Show or PC Game Show or whatever? I forgot about games I saw in the Xbox conference. And I forget myself that there's even a wish list on a PS4 or the PlayStation Store. There's like you little heart it. I don't know where to find that list after I heart it. But the thing is, I don't even think about that list in the first. Like, I don't think about my wish list on Steam. So it's different for everybody. But
I only think about my wish list when I get the email. Hey, this item on your wish list is on sale.
But with something like Game Pass, I think Microsoft is so successful because with Game Pass, somebody who subscribes to Game Pass probably thinks, I have access to all these games now. Well, what games do I have to access? I'll go to the Game Pass
go
page.
through all of them.
Just go
I think another good feature of Game Pass is the pick a game for me, and it's like, here's,
Yeah.
we'll just go through our entire list of every game we have and shove it in your face.
Yeah. And then they also have a like, hey, here's what's new. Like before you even get to the list of games, there's a banner that's like, these are the games that are new this week or this month or whatever. Mm-hmm. So Microsoft has like a better way of doing it. But yeah, Sony's, I think, failure is the store specifically. I want to play both sides. That way I don't lose. But also, like, I'm not blaming like the publisher for these games either, but wouldn't that be where your social media would come in to like get your word out for your game?
Yeah.
And on top of that, if your game isn't interesting or good enough, I'm not saying that these games are,
Yep.
If game X.
It's just, if it's not a hit, it's not a hit, like was it Cruelty Squad?
Mm-hmm.
Like Cruelty Squad, never heard of it. Go to Steam and it's overwhelmingly possible or overwhelmingly positive. Blah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's like, oh wow, okay, cool. Like, but how big is that? How big is your audience for that game going to get? Especially when like console games are dominated by very specific genres, i.e., Call of Duty.
Sure.
Stuff like that.
So
Fortnite,
I think
whatever.
One of the things that makes this complex is like Steam's running off an algorithm, right? Of trying to figure out what games you want to see. And I think this is going to sound naive, but I think partially it's the same reason that YouTube and every other platform has an algorithm. It's because it wants you to be engaged as much as possible. Mm-hmm. So it knows what you're interested in. It's going to throw stuff you're interested in right in your face as much as possible, right? The other side is it does
hyperfixated.
The other side is that it does make sense for that kind of system. Because if you do like niche games, like I love tactical shooters, Squad, Postscriptum, whatever, right? Yeah. It can be tough to find those games, right? Mm-hmm. So it's nice if there's an algorithm that helps connect the dots there and say, oh, you like Squad? Here's Hell Let Loose. Similar game, whatever. So that makes sense. Now, some of the other, let me wrap that point up. So part of the issue is that algorithms get in the way, and I think sometimes that builds bubbles, right? So you don't see things that you would be interested in, but algorithms are sort of, because it's a computer, like, well, you've never liked this type of game before. You've never had coffee afternoon, so why would you want to have coffee afternoon today? That kind of thing. Now, sorry, that's like, like there's that scene in Airplane where, where it's like, Bob never has coffee after 2. And then later on, it's like, Bob never fights terrorists or whatever as the airplane scene goes on. Anyway, sorry. So algorithms, thing to the side. The other thing, the other point I was going to make eventually, which is in my head, and I've lost it, but there was a third point as well. I feel like this is sort of a big issue. Because if your main competitor has an ecosystem that's all about come on in, we've got a price point, where this subscription service is super popular, and one of your weaknesses is smaller games have a harder time selling on our storefront. That's almost like a pipeline that goes from you directly to your competitor, right? And if it's so much easier to discover games on Game Pass, which that's all Game Pass is about, is here's everything we have on Game Pass.
Everything forever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And your storefront lacks that same sort of discoverability. That's a huge advantage with Xbox, right? And we keep talking about this generation. Does PlayStation feel any pressure? Because Xbox is doing all these changes, doing all these moves. Phil Spencer's just buying a new freaking Blazer every single day. Xbox. It's crazy. I referenced him just so I could press that button.
I know.
But PlayStation's sort of, comfortable where they are. At some point, I feel like you have to compete on the same level as your opponent. Now, maybe Herman Hulst would sit across from me and go, dude, we don't even think about Xbox. Because we're making so much money off of Ghost of Tsushima, it's crazy. So maybe that's what he would say.
Even consider what Xbox is doing, because what Sony is doing is extremely successful. And so even if they have a flaw that's a pipeline to Xbox, they're still super successful.
Okay. All right.
Like I don't like, even with, is this an issue for Sony? Yes.
Yeah. And go ahead.
Should developers be able to get their games marketed on storefronts and all that? Yes, that should happen. Should they have to pay $25,000 and 30% of subsequent earnings? No.
Boo.
However, and this podcast, we'll just rename this the Doctrine podcast, because it falls under what Sony wants to do. Because they don't need a storefront that's super user friendly and for the user to find out stuff.
Right.
If they're selling God of War, Days Gone, like they're big. I don't know why I said Days Gone. I wouldn't really put that in their big game titles, but God of War,
Last of Us Part 2.
Last of Us Part 2,
Ghost of Tsushima.
They're
Gone,
big,
yeah.
massive titles that are what is under the Sony umbrella. They don't need a smaller gamer storefront, because that's not what it is.
Okay. Yeah.
It's Apple versus Android at this point. Apple does, very specific things, and you go to the Apple store to do that. If you want an Android or any other phone, you go to literally anywhere else. So if you want these big monolithic games, you go to Sony. If you want literally anything else, you go to Xbox.
Okay. All right. Were you going to say something, Richard?
I love thinking about this. I love thinking about like the fact that Sony's storefront for indie games is terrible, because the person who is even worse than Sony is Nintendo. And these indie companies are printing gold with Nintendo. Like, how is this happening? Like, Nintendo's Switch storefront is terrible. There is a very good wish list, and I actually do remember about that all the time. Mm-hmm. But there's no rating system. There's no filtering for for quality assurance. And these companies just are like, we're selling 4-1 on Switch. It's like we're making hand over fist.
Yeah.
And they just can't budge on Sony. It's wild.
Nintendo thing. Hashtag Nintendo thing.
Well, yes, however many million units sold for the Switch, 80 million or something like that. We'll find out next NPDs.
The thing I wanted to get back to is that, so I don't want to glaze over the fact that, and Connor, you mentioned it, but I think we should emphasize it, that whether or not, regardless of the conversation about Xbox and PlayStation, PlayStation should fix this.
Yeah.
There should be better communication. There should be more equitable relationships going on. It should be a much easier experience for publishers to figure out what's going on. Obviously, it's never going to be easy because there's just, the demand is really high, but the supply is even higher. So it's never going to be a perfect scenario where every single game that deserves attention gets it. But yeah, man, when you saw all these tweets and people saying, trust me, there's plenty of developers reading this, shaking their heads. Like I said, it's not surprising, but it's like, oh, okay, they're like that. Alrighty then, interesting. And it makes you wonder about other storefronts and whatnot. And it gives a little credence to what Epic's trying to do, right? Because
itch.io, baby.
or yeah, and what itch.io and a smaller storefront, GOG. Kind of reminds you that I think competition is good. But anyway, we're not going to go on a bunch of other tangents. So we're going to move on. It is now being officially reported that a Dead Space remake is in the works at EA Motive. This is according to Jeff Grubb, who hinted at the news last week. He may argue he didn't hint at it, so he talked about it last week. Strike from the record hint.
He said dead last week.
No, it wasn't him. I don't remember what the conversation was.
The word dead was said.
The word dead was said with regards to the EA Motive. Jeff Grubb is reporting this week. Eurogamer and Ingematsu are also reporting it. Eurogamer somewhat confirmed it last week, but didn't really explicitly say. Mm-hmm. Grubb said Motive is taking notes from Capcom's Resident Evil remakes, and that we should expect the original Dead Space will be used as a strong foundation. Reading straight from his story, there's a paragraph that kind of made me go nuts. Quote, EA has likely warmed back up to the idea of producing single-player adventures after the success of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. The publisher has made statements in the recent past about shifting its focus to live service games, and that was part of a deliberate decision to invest in less in single player experiences following poor results for Mirror's Edge Catalyst. End quote. Okay. So I never got around. I think I may have played a demo version of Mirror's Edge Catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
Richard, you said it wasn't very good.
Yeah, I mean, I played 5 hours. I mean, like, you know, I'm not an expert on the game, but the first Mirror's Edge, excellent single player game.
Sure.
It had a very, very interesting play style. You're, you know, a parkour delivery woman in the near future, you know, corporations taking over, et cetera, et cetera.
Like a surveillance state.
Yeah, pretty much. So the parkour system had a very, I don't want to say realistic, but if I were to jump on the wall, I would have to press another combination of buttons to turn myself around and then jump on the next buildings. But the way the game was structured, it allowed for very cool combinations of these moves, along with, you know, your gunplay and fighting, which you really weren't supposed to do. You could do it. It didn't work very well on purpose because you're not a fighter. You are, you know, a delivery woman. But the game sold well, but not well enough for EA to want to make a sequel at first. And then people started to really love Mirror's Edge. Yes, like you know, cult classic, whatever. So they made Mirror's Edge and
Mirror's Edge Catalyst.
Yeah. A Mirror's Edge Catalyst. And they did like a pseudo reboot. They changed the story they did like a origin story for Faith, the main character Faith. They turned it into an open world game, which was a good idea, but it was a very Far Cry-esque open world, you know, formula. And your parkour system was simply just pressing A to jump onto things. Like it was just, they kind of took everything that made Mirror's Edge really neat and unique and kind of just
threw it away.
Yeah, it was just like, no, basic, very basic first-person shooter. Or not first-person shooter, very basic first-person game. I think they were dealing with like Battlefront 4 at the time as well. So, or Battlefield 4, because it was done by DICE. So,
okay.
And DICE was doing Battlefield 4 at the time, so I don't really think they had their heart in it, you know, or their focus. So,
okay.
But Mirror's Edge, like, hold on, sorry, just because this statement is bad as well, because like of all of your single player, like you're banking on Mirror's Edge, like the game that didn't sell well for you in the first place, and we had to beg for a sequel that you didn't give us a good sequel for. And you're like, well, it looks like, you know, we're going to quit on this.
If this is accurately described, which I have no reason not to think it is, that would be as though Disney, in the middle of Marvel, in the middle of the lead up to the Avengers, when the, you know, second Ant-Man didn't do so well, they decided, well, we're just going to have to give this entire thing up. Like, that's how asinine this is. And I
think what actually happened is whoever Jeff Grubb's source was when he was talking to him was some, you know, CEO at EA or whatever, and they just have a dartboard of all their failed games and like, oh, we blamed it on Catalyst.
So,
how many failed single player games do they really have? All 3 Dead Space games sold amazingly well. All their Army of Two games were co-op games where you could play a single player. Those sold amazingly well. Dante's Inferno sold amazingly well.
Did they all really sell well?
I mean, yeah, they sell well enough to be backwards compatible and you know, have a following.
Okay, there's this thing. I don't want to. If Andrew Wilson is smarter than I am when it comes to the games industry, right? I am not going to delude myself into thinking that EA executives, that I could run Electronic Arts, right? I couldn't. At the same time, there are some things that are so stupid, it does make me wonder. Because if the reason you decided to get away from single player games was in no small part the failure of Mirror's Edge Catalyst, that drives me insane. Because you're completely losing sight on the rest of the industry around you, right? Single player games, there have been a ton of amazing single player games these past few years. Have we ever gone more than 2 or 3 years without getting an amazing single player game?
No.
Like, I don't think we have.
No.
I can't do it off the top of my head, but in the past 5 years, we've gotten, or the past 6 years, we've gotten Witcher, all of PlayStation's games, Dishonored. I mean, what's the Arcane? Arcane made Prey. A lot of people didn't like Prey. I thought Prey was okay, but Prey was on. I mean, so you could just sit down and list all the great single player games.
Assassin's Creed lot.
Assassin's
Connor hit the mic. Assassin's Creed games that a lot of people
Evil
thought
Within.
was Evil Within. So there's a lot of really cool things. So anyway, the point I'm trying to make is, every now and then we hear something. Now, this didn't come directly from an executive. This was someone reporting something. But Jeff Grubb's a good reporter, so I don't think I have no reason to not believe this. It just stuns me that this is your reason for losing faith, no pun intended, in single player games. Like, this is it.
You have to remember, a while back, this is a couple of years now, podcast was going strong, still is, and they made the announcement that they're going to focus less on single player games because it's not what people want to play. Now they're saying this. This just cements what I said back then, which EA doesn't know anything that they want to do or what the market wants. They just know how to make money.
Yeah.
So
that was a famous moment in gaming discourse history.
Yeah, we joke about it to this day. And them saying that it's because people don't want to play single player games, and then now, it was because Catalyst didn't sell well.
Do you remember who said that?
It was it a Jason Schreier quote? Or no.
Who said that people don't like single player games? We're paraphrasing.
Jim Ryan?
Blake Jorgensen.
Oh, Blake Jorgensen.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wow. I forget who it is. Anyway.
Keegan Michael.
Yep. Blake Jorgensen. That was in Scottsdale too.
Yeah.
Like some convention. He said players didn't like linear games or whatever.
Single player games.
Well, I think he said linear was a term players didn't like. It was a very corporate-y, like, okay, well, man, I think he was also it may have been someone else that said, no one wants a pink Darth Vader. There are a lot of stupid things.
There are a ton of pink Darth Vaders, okay?
There are a ton of stupid
Since
things.
At least the late
but
2000s.
again, even
like 2017
even
on,
with that,
Electronic Arts has said a lot of stupid shit.
EA doesn't know they just know how to manipulate it to make money.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because I think it's fair to say that EA really hasn't done anything innovative in the gaming industry world in a while. They've just been doing the same old thing, slapping a new paint of coat on it, and selling it.
I think I would agree. Like,
EA has...
Innovative is one of those words where it's like, well, how do you define innovation? But
EA hasn't done anything new other than restart doing Star Wars games. They've plateaued for a long time when it comes, like... They've just been doing the same games. They've put out a FIFA, Madden, this. Yes, and that's what every company does. But at the same time, let's look
they don't foster creativity.
Let's look at, what Sony's been doing. And Sony had, these large games, and then they started building them up even taller, making even more grandiose games, outshining the next one and the next, previous one rather. Like, each massive monolithic game they produce is so much more better than the last one because they have the experience of that one and they're adding on to it. EA has just been doing the same shit over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think.
And when they try to do something new, they
don't do it correctly and it fails.
Yeah, it fails or it's bland.
If I remember correctly, Respawn is headed by, is it Vince Zampella?
Yes.
But Respawn sort of has an autonomy that like DICE doesn't in EA. Is that correct? I vaguely remember us talking about that.
Maybe.
I want to say there's something going on where Respawn has sort of more of a leash than like DICE. I don't remember why though, specifically. I feel like that's correct though. Because I remember when Fallen Order came out, there was the whole thing about there's going to be no loot boxes and none of this and none of that. Single player game, have fun, kiddos, And everyone's like, but it's an EA game. How is that possible? And I remember one of the things reading that, like, anyway, the point I'm trying to make is, it's interesting that we keep hearing about Jedi Fallen Order being an inspiration for this, because if Respawn does have more autonomy, then again, it's not EA doing something. It's a company within EA, loosely associated with them, that does it. And EA is like, oh, wow, that worked. The other thing is, it does not take genius to see the Resident Evil remakes and go, what do we have that can fit that? I don't know.
There's a backlog of games you guys have forgotten about that EA can do.
I guess why I'm frustrated is because, like, as soon as the Resident Evil remake started, it was like, okay, this is going to be a thing, right? Because it's not lazy. The games were good. Resident Evil 2 was phenomenal. Another good single player game. Yeah. Resident Evil 2. The remake, and the first one too, but that one didn't happen 5 years ago.
That's not the important part.
Sure. But anyway, like, if you are, like, if you have all these IPs that you need to dust off, now is the time to do it.
Yeah, give it a shot, because there's a bigger audience now than there was when those games came out. So give it another shot. Yeah. And right now, with it's a no-brainer with streaming and horror games. Like,
oh yeah,
Dead Space is going to be a hit, man. If this is a reboot.
Oh my God,
absolutely.
If this is true, I will be very excited. Dead Space was so freaking cool. Like Fear is my favorite horror game of all time. But Fear takes a lot of inspiration from, in some ways, Fear is similar to like Medal of Honors, early Medal of Honors.
You better explain yourself.
because it's sort of that fast-paced combat and stuff, right? Yeah. It's not quite early 2000s combat, like Unreal Tournament, but it's not Call of Duty Modern Warfare combat. It's somewhere in the middle, kind of.
I get it. I get that at least.
But the combat, right, in Fear. Now, obviously, Alma haunting you, crawling at you, spooky things, that's not Medal of Honor at all. So combat-wise, I guess. But the point I'm trying to make is, Fear is my favorite horror game of all time. But it took a lot from trends, right? Japanese horror was a big thing in the early 2000s in the United States.
Yes.
It took a lot of inspiration from shooters and stuff like that, where Dead Space, I feel like, was really unique. Shooting the arms off of these crazy monster things, Isaac having health on his back. There was some Resident Evil there. There was some alien there. You're the engineer of the ship trying to figure it out, right? Anyway, so
there was innovation, developer,
sure,
and then EA, I guess you could call it, acquired innovative. Them and bastardized the hell out of it, like they do with everything.
And it also mixed, and maybe Resident Evil did this too. Dead Space sort of mixed in that cinematic, like the excitement of a Uncharted, or Nathan's hanging off of a car that's dangling from a cliff or whatever, right? And it's crazy. Yeah. But instead of it being exciting and Indiana Jones-esque, it's terrifying.
It's alien.
It's this gigantic tentacle pulling Isaac through hallways, and you have to like shoot the tentacle as it's dragging you towards some monstrosity of a mouth or something. Anyway, they mixed all that so well. And I just want to thank Visceral. I don't know where I'm going. Anyway, it would really excite me because like we haven't had a horror game like that. Maybe Resident Evil 2. And I haven't played Resident Evil 3. So I don't know if there's things like that. But that sort of horror went away. And yeah, maybe it's because it was ran into the ground with electronic arts. I don't know. Anyway, that's all I want to say. I'm going to stop myself from talking.
The villain of Mirror's Edge Catalyst looks exactly like Andrew Wilson.
Wait, really?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that.
I'll have to look it up after the podcast.
So maybe Dice was saying something.
Are we ready for tidbits?
Yes.
A man discusses the news, but not like the big news, the little news. Little bit. This is the tidbits. That was a great sounder, but someone pressed a button in the middle of it. So
you told me to do the marking. put a marker, but I didn't have the right window selected.
Richard, takes a little bit.
All right. Persona 4 Golden has sold over 1 million copies on PC. Congratulations to Sega and Atlas. With this, this news provides more hope that we will get ports of Persona games and other Atlas titles to PC.
Yes,
of course, this was also announced on Twitter. But yeah, Persona 4 Golden's on sale right now. You can find it for like $13. Go buy it. It's a great JRPG.
I just want Persona on Switch. I want Persona 4
Don't we
on
all?
Switch.
Don't we all? I will buy it again. I will 100% spend
and I'll play through it. I'll listen to Morgana tell me to go to bed, and I'll do all that.
They don't do that
again.
as much in Royal. So.
I remember you telling me that. Yeah. Thank God.
So this was originally a tidbit set for today. That was originally a rumor, but ended up being confirmed this morning. But the ESRB had leaked Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut, possibly confirming information that we were told last week about a possible expansion to the game. Today it was confirmed by an official announcement from Sony. There will be Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut. It will be released in August. There will be a new island, Iki Island, with the new story. You're still playing as Jin, new enemies, new trophies. There is added haptic feedback to the PS5 version, rumble features. Japanese lip syncing has been added.
That's cool.
Thank goodness.
That's cool.
Listening to Japanese, but they're speaking in English was just really weird. 4K, 60 frames a second. The upgrade, if you already own Ghost of Tsushima on the PS4, the upgrade to the Director's Cut will be $20.
And that's on PS4.
It's on PS4, yes. If you have a copy of PS4 and you upgrade it to the PS5, it'll be $30.
Okay.
Which I think is pretty good, but people are bitching about that.
I remember when they, in the blog post, it was kind of confusing, maybe. I don't know. But that doesn't seem super confusing.
Everyone on Twitter wants it to be free.
Well, that's Twitter. What are you gonna?
Like, why isn't it free? Why aren't you giving me this?
Worst country on earth.
It's like, Twitter. Are you serious, man? Like, these guys spent time making this shit. You got to pay them. Bloober Team announces a new partnership with Konami. Bloober Team has officially announced a strategic partnership that will see the two jointly developing selected contents and exchanging know-how. We have no idea what the hell that means, but Bloober Team has been very vocal about their efforts to try to, get the attention of Konami Senpai so that they could possibly make a Silent Hill. So let's see what happens. The medium was pretty good. Wasn't it like, the whole split thing was really neat, but they kind of, I think the way they explained it, how it would work was confusing because it's all scripted.
Oh, okay.
Like it happens at scripted moments that you have to, and you don't actually really play both of them at the same time. It's kind of like one and then you do the other.
Oh, I see.
So, okay. Yeah. Anyways, Dragon Age 4 and the new Mass Effect will not be at EA Play, unfortunately. Bad days. You have to wait longer for that information. And then Hideo Kojima's deal with Xbox reaches a milestone. Hideo Kojima and Microsoft has signed a letter of intent that states the two parties intend to work out details on a publishing agreement for a new Xbox game, according to the sources familiar with the matter. This, of course, obviously means that both parties are or will be working together soon on something. So we will see what that is in the future.
Man, I know a lot of people didn't like Death Stranding, and there's a lot wrong with Death Stranding, but I'm so happy that Death Stranding exists. Because something as bonkers as Death Stranding does not get to be made a lot, right? Yeah. Something as unique and crazy and weird as Death Stranding, especially in the video game climate, AAA, on the AAA level, obviously. You can find stuff on Steam that's crazy made by smaller developers, but on the scale that Death Stranding was, where, putting together all the footage and whatnot, there's it's like 50 hours of cinematic cutscenes and stuff like that. I'm so glad it exists, and I just hope that the same thing happens again. Just give the guy a blank check and say, be as stupid as you can possibly be. Because Death Stranding was really fun, and I have tons of criticisms for Death Stranding, but again, the most important thing about the game is that it made you do things that I've never done in a video game before, and that was a lot of fun to experience.
Gonna make aluminum cog liquid.
My new game only comes in bowls. You must drink it, and what you experience is the game. Anyway, any other tidbits?
No, that's it. That's all for the tidbits this week.
With Kojima and Xbox, I'm really hoping we get a full version of a playable trailer.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean like
an actual game?
Like an entire game playable trailer?
Yeah.
And then it's like at the end of the game, you're forced to give $60. It's like, all right, now you're forced to give $60 so the FBI will come a knocking because you just played our game.
Make the game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Alrighty, I guess we'll end it here. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, the YouTube/Gaming Discourse, where we post videos. And we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.